What was your I'm dating a effing idiot moment? Story 1. She had a new telescope and thought it would be really cute to check out the stars after a date one night. I don't remember the full conversation, but at some point I joked about us being stuck together on this giant ball in space. She looked through the telescope again and said, "So you believe that, huh?" I just stared at her blankly because I was afraid of that question going any further. Anyways, happy to share that we didn't last long, but did you guys know that there's totally a lot of evidence that our planet is probably not round? Story 2. I mentioned that I loved stargazing on camping trips because it would actually get dark enough to see the Milky Way. Apparently, I was lying to him, as it's impossible to see the Milky Way since we're in it. Same dude also refused to believe that huckleberries existed. Again, this came up when I was talking about picking and eating huckleberries on a hike. He had to interrupt me to tell me I was wrong because huckleberries were made up. Everyone says dumb things sometimes. What was remarkable was how confidently he went out of his way to convince me I was wrongly, and then got upset at me for bickering when I didn't immediately agree that something I'd been looking at or eating for most of my life was in my imagination. Story 3. Dude I was dating turned out to be the worst kind of know-it-all because his facts were mostly wrong. He told me not to tell him that because he doesn't like it. It's been done before and it's not true. I hadn't encountered an incident of it yet, so I memorized that but didn't think about it much, even if I thought it was weird to tell me that. Fast forward a few days, we were sitting at dinner at a restaurant talking about whatever when peripherally something about human organs floats by, and that the pH of the stomach is about 3. He looks at me with a smile of deep condescension and says, "The pH of the stomach is 10. He said that so final and with such an air of superiority that I stopped mid-sentence. You don't want to be rude back, and mistakes happen anyway. So I tried to tell him politely that he might have a false memory there, or a teacher in his past might have mixed something up. I just didn't want to embarrass him more than he already did himself in public. But he was committed to this. My name, I know the pH of the stomach is 10. You're wrong. I told him to please look it up because I'm a biologist and I'm confident enough in my education. He did, and he was wrong. There were a couple similar incidents after this one. Hilariously, when we broke up, one of his gripes was, "I believe you think I'm stupid." In reality, it was that, and the fact he was not only wrong, but malicious and utterly confident in both. Story 4. When he ran out of gas while in line at the Starbucks drive-thru, right across the street from the gas station. I told him to get gas first because his car was low, but he really needed that iced caramel macchiato. I asked why he didn't listen to me, and he replied with, "I thought I could make it." He ended up pushing the car through the drive-thru and got his coffee while doing so, then parked the car in the lot and called a tow. To tow it back home, instead of the gas station across the street. No, he did not get any gas that day. He waited until his dad got off work to bring a 3-gallon jug of gasoline because I refused to enable that shit. ETA. I fell asleep after commenting, "I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone with all these comments, holy shit, thank you for the reward." Yes, I'm still in a relationship with him. He's a space case, but so am I. Just not to that extent, LMAO. I have not let him live that day down, and he has learned to get gas first every time now. The worst part of that day was the fact he didn't remember he had a canister for gasoline in his trunk. He told me he towed the car home instead of the gas station because he was too embarrassed and ashamed of himself. I asked why he still pushed his car through the Starbucks drive-thru, and he deadpan goes, "I had enough stars for a free drink. I was going to put the extra money I saved in my tank. Gas." My brain broke for a second because he uses the preloaded Starbucks app. How was he going to use $7 of his preloaded Starbucks app at a Chevron? He still hasn't answered me, and it's been 2 years since it happened. Story 5. Was babysitting for a mutual friend as she had work. I spent the entire morning through afternoon looking after the baby while my boyfriend at the time played video games. This was okay with me as I'd been asked to babysit and not him. He was only there as the mutual friend approved him coming along, so I had company. Around 2 p.m., I asked him to look after the baby so I could make myself some lunch. Unknown to me, my partner simply sat the baby next to him while he continued his game. The baby rolled off the couch and obviously whacked her head on the ground when she landed. Then he yelled at me for giving him the baby while he was clearly busy. He tried to stop me from calling the mother and letting her know what had happened. Baby ended up being okay, but there are various things I wish I did differently that day. Broke up with him shortly after that. Story 6. In college, I was sitting with friends and a mutual asked her if she knew what the closest planet to the sun was. And after thinking about it hard, she asked me if the moon was closer to the sun than the Earth was, and eventually responded with Mars. I then asked to say the planets in order from closest to furthest, and she said it was Mars, the moon, Earth, then Jupiter. I thought that maybe me knowing the planets might just be because I was really into space, and I begun asking other friends that question. And I had a mixed response, but after trying to teach her about the solar system, she would constantly tell me she didn't believe it, because if gravity was what was making them go around the sun, they would just fall onto each other. And absolutely no amount of explanation of orbits from me or videos I showed her were being absorbed into her head. It was so frustrating, lol, and I couldn't understand how she couldn't understand. She was also highly skeptical about the Big Bang, black holes, galaxies, and other astronomical objects existing, etc., constantly saying that scientists have never been there and they're making it up. Although we didn't break up over this, nor do I think it harmed our relationship in any massive way, lol. I'm assuming because we dated for a further 5 months until something else happened. I do very clearly remember thinking, if we have kids, I can't let her ignorance affect them. Story 7. I don't know where to start, but at first there were a lot of minor things. She couldn't keep track of anything and would often think she'll just handle things as they come. So it was almost the norm that she got surprised by her period and naturally had nothing at home, unless she stole mine. If I asked her if we had milk or anything else home enough to last a few days, she'd say there was, only to send me to the nearby kiosk to get some when there was like a squirt of milk left. She couldn't keep a job, as this exact mentality carried there too. She'd always think they'll understand or they won't notice if she skips a day. A spoiler. They didn't understand and they sure noticed. She'd constantly wear my clothes. We were of very different sizes, her being XS and me M. Mine looked like she was wearing a tent. When I asked her not to, she said I could just wear some of hers. She was just an endless stream of bad choices, like buying an expensive phone with a long loan period, trashing it like within 5 months, and then being surprised that the down payment bills kept on going even when she had thrown the phone away and got a new one. Finally, she got into trouble with the law. She got sunglasses from some cheap crap store. They broke within a week or so. She went into the store, put the broken ones back into the display case, and took a new pair. A security guard saw that, and naturally she got fined for shoplifting for a pair of sunglasses that they would have exchanged no questions asked. This didn't help at all with her job situation. Life with her was just constant guessing of what's going to go horribly wrong today. The really sad part was that outside that, she was cheery and a fun person and cute as a button. Story 8. I was in a long-term relationship with a girl while I was attending grad school, and we shared a studio apartment. One winter evening, I had planned to spend a late night at the school library doing some reading assignments, but was so exhausted that I decided to pack up and go home early. When I got home, I opened the door and immediately got hit by an overwhelming smell of gas. Turns out this girl had decided that she was cold, and the best way to heat up our apartment would be to turn the oven on and leave the oven door open, thinking the heat from the oven would warm the apartment. Did I mention the windows were completely shut and locked? I immediately opened the windows, got her out of the apartment, and called building management. She couldn't understand what the big deal was until I finally got through to her that she could have very well died of carbon monoxide poisoning had I not come home early that night. To top it off, she told me she had planned to light some candles. We broke up a few months later. Story 9. We were following directions somewhere. Long drive, about 5 HRs, that had about 3 turns. Like drive to X, then turn left, then to Y, and turn right. You get the point. Written instructions. This was before smartphones or GPS. A few days later, when we were going to head back, I said get those directions and change the lefts to rights and the rights to lefts. We proceeded to argue for about 10 minutes, with me becoming more and more perplexed. Eventually, I had to draw a picture of an intersection and a line showing a car turning the corner, then slowly follow the line back the other way to show that a right turn had, indeed, become a left turn. There was this gradual flickering of recognition in her eyes that slowly spread. I swear she became sentient in that moment. Okay, not really. Story 10, she thought deaf people had service animals because they could somehow understand English and communicate that to the deaf person. She thought Tom Clancy was pronounced Tommy Clayson. That's how I found out she was dyslexic. She said she wanted to work at a stable because her aunt owned horses. I asked what she knew about horses, and she said, I know that when you feed them, you have to do it like this. and she held her hand out flat. Apparently, that was everything she knew about horses.